Okay, question from Jim. What did Snead, Hogan, and Lee Trevino have in common? And what made them such great ball strikers? Well, my thought on that would be Hogan and Snead certainly came from that era of heavier gear, flatter line angles, stiffer shafts, no offset, that sort of thing, and a high spinning golf ball. So the golf courses were different back then. The old classic courses, generally speaking, were much narrower. The greens were smaller. It was much more a game of accuracy. So kind of the mother of invention thing. You're going to figure out a game that's going to put you in the fairway. If you can figure out how to hit it long and straight, that's desirable. Trevino would have been a little bit after that, but still would have grown up in that, in the 60s. He would have been a junior player, maybe in the late 50s, early 60s. I guess he started kind of late, but he would have been in that era as well. So, and he said that he was influenced by Hogan, watching Hogan and stuff too. So, what did they have in common? Well, the first thing that they had in common is that all of those guys were deep on the 430 line coming into it. Probably Trevino the most of them all, because he rotated his plane line. So if I got a T-square here. So if I've got this T-square here, what Trevino basically did is he put the ball back in his stance and rotated this line out to the right, which then would naturally want to put you even deeper on the 430 line, and you're going to see this shaft with Trevino way down in here. So you see that with Snead, you see that with Hogan, and so that would be, as far as the entry into impact, that would be the common element that they would have had. Hogan was the flattest of them. Trevino was kind of outside but dropped it in flat. And Snead also transitioned the shaft well too. It always had that club shaft working at right angles to his spine. Even I think there was a recent video that I posted on the Advanced Ball Striking site that showed Snead when he's in his 80s playing at the Ceremonial Masters, and there he is with that shaft just right on the 430 line, down low. So coming out of that kind of ideology, which is what I would teach, Hogan, Snead, Trevino, and then secondly, most importantly, would be accelerating pivots through the strike, big accelerators, holding shaft flex. So Trevino would have had the shorter backswing. So in a way, it's kind of easier to hold shaft flex with a shorter backswing. You take it back short, accelerate through. The longer flowing backswings tend to over accelerate. You start losing shaft flex. So Snead, both Hogan and Snead were similar in that they both started their downswings with lower body movement. Snead was very much with a sit and a squat with some lateral movement, but it was very deep in the knees, allowed the torso to stay fairly closed. And then Hogan with the wider stance and the big lateral move, shifting in down the 430 line. All of this delaying the acceleration of the torso and the pivot so that you can keep stress on the shaft, hold shaft flex into impact. People are going to argue this, and they say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this. Well, you can do this. You go back 20 videos or so, or 30 on mine, I showed you could do it. You can hold shaft flex through the strike. It can be done. The problem is that the weight of the club on the shaft tends to pull it straight. When this thing's moving 100 miles an hour plus, it tends to straighten out the shaft, but it doesn't mean that the kinetic energy isn't still stored in the shaft by holding the shaft flex. And you hold the shaft when the shaft is flexed, but you're also pulling it this way from the weight of the club. The centrifugal force kind of thing tends to pull that straight. So it's a combination of the kinetic energy that's stored this way in the shaft and then pulled straight in the shaft. So you don't see it as much. It's hard to see it on camera, but as I demonstrated with earlier, that if you slow it down a little bit and then accelerate, yes, of course you can hold shaft flex, and I showed that in a video. So you can go back and look at that. So again, those were three guys that would be big shaft flex holders. And one of the things that really separated the good strikers from the great strikers was just that. One of the missing points of the advantages of holding shaft flex is that if you're holding shaft flex, you can see here, I'm putting a lot more pressure in my hands. I can really feel the club magnitude of feel from holding shaft flex, especially into the right hand. And the more feel and pressure I have in my hand, well, that's really the lifeblood of the swing. And as I have that increased pressure, I can feel exactly where that club face is at as I'm going through the strike. That's what Hogan and Snead and Trevino all knew this, whether they knew it intellectually or intuitively. They would have known that you want to be increasing the pressure in your hands through the strike. And you're not going to do that as easily with a lightweight club that's too fast to accelerate from the top. Yes, you can get tremendous speed, but you start losing as soon as the acceleration rate reaches 0, which is easy to do when you over accelerate. Then you lose all of that pressure in the right hand. You have none. You only have the like the centrifugal or longitudinal acceleration moving down the shaft. You feel that pull that way, but you lose this pressure through the strike. And this is what the great players figured out. I certainly figured that out in my game, that if I can feel the pressure on the right side of the shaft by accelerating the club through the strike, that's where I'm going to have the pinpoint ball control. And then as we teach in the advanced ball striking class, how to draw and fade the ball with a more sophisticated method of doing that, which just makes it really easy to just hit a little 5-yard fade or a 5-yard draw as compared with all of the other techniques out there that people try and do to draw and fade the ball. So it ultimately works towards better craftsmanship in the game, better ball control, and just better playability to do it the way they did it. And that's why I teach it, because I think it's better. In fact, I know it's better. So hopefully that answers some of that question.